The dust kicked up beneath Rachel Lawson's worn boots as she trudged along the main street of Montezuma, Wyoming Territory, 1871, clutching her youngest to her chest, while her two older children trailed behind, their small hands gripping her tattered skirt. The whispers followed her like shadows, cutting deeper than the autumn chill that swept through the frontier town. "There she goes again, the widow with those hungry-looking children," came a harsh whisper from Mrs. Daniels outside the general store. "3 mouths to feed and not a penny to her name." Rachel kept her chin high, though her heart sank lower with each step. 6 months since typhoid had taken her husband, leaving her with nothing but 3 children, mounting debts, and a dilapidated cabin on the outskirts of town. At 26, she'd already lived through more hardship than most women twice her age. "Mama, I'm hungry," whispered 8-year-old Elijah, tugging at her skirt. Beside him, 6-year-old Hannah remained silent, her solemn eyes watching everything, understanding more than any child should. "We'll eat soon, darling," Rachel promised, adjusting 10-month-old Sarah on her hip. The baby whimpered softly, her cheeks hollow from too many missed meals. Rachel approached Wilkins' General Store with determination in her step. She had exactly 43 cents to her name, enough for flour and perhaps a bit of salt. As she reached for the door, it swung open violently, nearly knocking her backward. "Watch yourself, woman," barked Josiah Montgomery, the wealthiest rancher in the county. His eyes narrowed when he recognized her. "Well, if it isn't the widow Lawson, still haven't packed up and headed east like I suggested?" Rachel's spine stiffened. "This is our home, Mr. Montgomery. We're not leaving." The man's lip curled in disgust. "Your husband left you nothing but debts and hungry mouths. No woman can make it alone out here, especially not one as poor as you." His gaze swept over her children with cold contempt. "Those children would be better off in an orphanage than starving with you." The words sliced through Rachel like a knife. She clutched Sarah tighter as Hannah pressed against her side, and Elijah's small hand formed a fist. "Mr. Montgomery," came a deep voice from behind them, "seems to me the lady deserves your respect, not your scorn." Rachel turned to see a tall man leaning against a hitching post. His hat was pulled low, but she could make out sun-weathered skin, a strong jaw darkened by stubble, and eyes as blue as a summer sky. A stranger, dressed like a cowboy with dust coating his clothes and a worn leather holster at his hip. Montgomery's face reddened. "This isn't your business, drifter." The cowboy straightened, towering over the rancher by several inches. "When a man insults a lady in public, he makes it everyone's business." "Lady?" Montgomery scoffed. "She's nothing but a burden on this town. 3 kids, a tumble-down shack, and not a penny to her name." The cowboy's eyes flicked to Rachel, then to the children half hidden behind her skirts. His expression softened momentarily before returning to Montgomery. "Then she'll be rich in love," he said simply, "which is more than I can say for you." Montgomery's face contorted with anger. For a moment, Rachel thought he might strike the stranger, but instead, he spat on the ground and stormed toward his waiting carriage. The cowboy tipped his hat slightly. "Madam, children." "Thank you, sir," Rachel said, finding her voice. "Though I fear you've made an enemy today on my account." A half smile touched his lips. "Men like that were enemies before I met them." He crouched down to eye level with Elijah. "That's a strong grip you got there, keeping your mama's skirt. You the man of the house?" Elijah nodded solemnly. "Since Pa died." "Doing a fine job, I can see." The cowboy rose, his gaze meeting Rachel's. "Name's Thomas Jameson. Most folks call me Tucker. Rachel Lawson, these are my children, Elijah, Hannah, and Sarah." Baby Sarah chose that moment to let out a hungry whimper, and Rachel gently bounced her, embarrassment heating her cheeks. Tucker glanced at the general store. "Were you heading in for supplies, Mrs. Lawson?" "Yes, we—" She stopped, pride warring with necessity. "We needed a few things." Tucker nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I've got some errands myself. Maybe your boy would like to help me carry a few items." He looked at Elijah. "I pay fair wages for good help." Rachel hesitated, but Elijah's eager expression decided for her. "That's very kind, Mr. Jameson." "Tucker, please." His smile reached his eyes this time. "And kindness has nothing to do with it. Just need an extra pair of hands. Inside the store, Tucker purchased not only his own supplies, but flour, sugar, coffee, salt pork, beans, and even a bag of peppermint sticks that made the children's eyes widen. When Rachel tried to protest, he merely said, "Payment for Elijah's help. Boy works hard, deserves fair compensation." It was a transparent excuse, but it allowed Rachel to maintain her dignity as she accepted the food her children desperately needed. "You're new to Montezuma," Rachel observed as they left the store, Elijah proudly carrying a small parcel. Tucker nodded. "Passing through. Got hired to help drive a herd to the railroad in Cheyenne. They're moving out tomorrow, but the trail boss gave us a day to rest." "Well, we're grateful you were passing through today," Rachel said softly. "Might be, I'll pass through again sometime." His eyes lingered on her face a moment longer than necessary. Montezuma seems like a town worth revisiting. Rachel felt a warmth she hadn't experienced since before her husband's death. "We live just beyond the creek, if you find yourself this way again." "I'll remember that, Mrs. Lawson." He tipped his hat once more before walking toward the saloon. Rachel watched him go, an unexpected lightness in her chest despite the weight of the packages in her arms. For the first time in months, dinner would be plentiful, and her children would go to bed with full stomachs. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Rachel sat on the porch of her small cabin, wrapped in a threadbare shawl against the autumn chill. The stars sprawled across the Wyoming sky in brilliant profusion, and she found herself wondering if Tucker Jameson was looking at those same stars, perhaps from a bedroll somewhere on the range. "Just passing through," she reminded herself quietly. Men like him didn't stay, especially not for a widow with 3 hungry children. But the next morning brought a surprise. As Rachel was drawing water from the well, she looked up to see a familiar figure on horseback approaching her cabin. "Good morning, Mrs. Lawson," Tucker called, dismounting with easy grace. Rachel smoothed her worn dress self-consciously. "Mr. Jameson, I thought you'd be on the trail by now." "Change of plans." He removed his hat, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at the ends. "Trail boss got word of a better price in Denver. They're holding off a week before heading south." Before Rachel could respond, the cabin door burst open and Elijah raced out, followed more slowly by Hannah. "Mr. Tucker!" Elijah exclaimed. "Have you come to visit us?" Tucker's face broke into a genuine smile. "Indeed I have, young man. And I've got a proposition for your mother, if she's willing to hear it." Rachel's heart beat faster. "Proposition? I noticed your roof has some bad patches, and that corral fence won't keep a determined goat in, let alone a horse." He gestured toward the sagging fence. "I've got a week to spare, and hands that know how to work. I'll fix what needs fixing in exchange for meals." Rachel's pride bristled slightly. "I'm not sure I can feed a man with your appetite properly in exchange for repairs." Tucker's eyes twinkled. "I'm easy to please, Mrs. Lawson. Besides, I've got my own supplies. Just need a reason to stay busy for a week." Rachel suspected there was more to it than that, but the roof did leak terribly and winter was coming. "Very well, Mr. Jameson. It seems we have an arrangement." Over the next days, Tucker proved himself not only skilled with his hands but gentle with her children. He fixed the roof, rebuilt the corral fence, chopped enough firewood to last months, and even repaired the broken wagon axle that had sat useless since before her husband's death. Each evening, Rachel served simple but hearty meals, now supplemented by rabbits and a deer Tucker had hunted. The children blossomed under his attention. He taught Elijah to whittle, showed Hannah how to identify bird calls, and made Sarah giggle with funny faces. On the 4th day, as Rachel hung laundry while Tucker mended the chicken coop, she found herself studying his profile. "Why are you really helping us, Mr. Jameson?" she finally asked. He paused, hammer in mid-swing. "Tucker," he corrected gently. "And maybe I just like the company. Most cowboys don't spend their free time fixing widows' cabins." Tucker drove another nail before answering. "Most cowboys haven't seen what I've seen." He turned to face her fully. "War changes a man, Mrs. Lawson, makes him value different things." "You fought in the war?" Rachel set down her laundry basket. Tucker nodded. "Union cavalry, 4 years that felt like 40. He looked away, his gaze distant. "When it ended, I couldn't settle back into Virginia life. Too many ghosts. So I headed west. And became a cowboy? Became a drifter with cowboy skills, he corrected with a wry smile. Moving keeps the ghosts at a distance. Rachel understood haunting all too well. Do you ever think of stopping somewhere, making a home? Something flickered in his eyes. Sometimes, when I find the right reason. Their gazes held for a long moment until baby Sarah's cry from inside broke the spell. That evening, after the children were asleep, Rachel found Tucker on the porch, staring at the stars. "They sleep like angels," he said as she joined him. "You're raising fine children, Rachel." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and it sounded right in his deep voice. "They miss their father," she said softly, "but they're resilient. Like their mother." Tucker turned to her. "Tomorrow's Sunday. Would you and the children allow me to escort you to church?" Rachel's heart skipped. "People will talk." "Let them." His voice was gentle but firm. "You've done nothing to be ashamed of." "No, but—" she hesitated. "I haven't attended since James died. Some in town believe I should have managed better. Saved more. They think a proper widow would have found a way." Tucker's expression hardened. "Then they need a lesson in Christian charity." The next morning, Rachel dressed the children in their best clothes, faded but clean. She wore her one good dress, patched carefully where it had worn thin. When Tucker arrived, he wore a clean shirt, and his hair was slicked back, though nothing could tame its natural wave. "You look beautiful," he said simply when he saw her, and Rachel felt herself blush like a girl. They caused quite a stir when they entered the church together, Tucker carrying Sarah, while Elijah and Hannah walked between them. Rachel felt the stares and whispers, but Tucker's steady presence beside her gave her strength. After the service, several women approached to greet Rachel, women who had previously ignored her. Men who had once looked through her now tipped their hats respectfully. "It appears you've elevated my standing in town merely by sitting beside me," Rachel murmured as they walked home. Tucker's mouth quirked upward. Or perhaps they're remembering their better natures. As they neared the cabin, they spotted a horse and buggy waiting. Rachel recognized it immediately, and her step faltered. "Mr. Montgomery," she said, her voice tight. "What brings you here?" The rancher stood from where he'd been sitting on her porch steps. His eyes narrowed when he spotted Tucker. "Mrs. Lawson," Montgomery said stiffly, "I've come on business." "Sunday business?" Tucker asked mildly, handing Sarah to Rachel. Montgomery ignored him. "I've purchased the note on your property, Mrs. Lawson. Your husband borrowed against this land, and that debt is now due." Rachel felt the blood drain from her face. "What? James would never. $300 with interest, due immediately." Montgomery produced a paper from his coat. "Or you can vacate within the week." Tucker stepped forward, his posture relaxed but somehow threatening. "May I see that document?" Montgomery hesitated, then thrust it at him. "It's legal and binding." Tucker examined it carefully. "Signed 2 years ago," he noted, "for equipment to expand the farm. But Mr. Lawson died 6 months back, correct?" Rachel nodded, confusion mingling with fear. Tucker handed the paper back. "Interesting, because I distinctly recall Wyoming Territory passing a law last year giving widows a grace period of 1 year before collection can begin on a deceased husband's debts." Montgomery's face reddened. "That's not—" "Additionally," Tucker continued conversationally, "the law requires notification in writing 30 days before any collection action. Has Mrs. Lawson received such notice?" Rachel shook her head, watching Montgomery's growing discomfort. "Furthermore," Tucker said, "I believe Judge Harmon would be very interested to hear how you acquired this specific debt when the bank held it previously, particularly when the judge's own widow sister was pressured similarly last year." Montgomery's complexion had gone from red to ashen. "You're bluffing. You're just a drifter." "Before the war, I read law in Richmond," Tucker said evenly. "Never took the bar exam, but I remember enough to spot a land grab when I see one." For a tense moment, the men stared at each other. Then Montgomery snatched back the paper. "This isn't over," he growled, but the threat sounded hollow. After he'd gone, Rachel turned to Tucker in amazement. "Is what you said true about the law?" Tucker's smile was faint. Every word. The territorial legislature passed it to protect war widows, but it applies to all. You have time, Rachel. Time to either pay the debt or sell on your own terms. Relief washed through her, followed quickly by worry. But where will I get $300? Tucker looked thoughtfully at the repaired wagon. That's a sturdy wagon now, and I happen to know the mercantile in Cheyenne pays triple for fresh eggs compared to here. With chickens laying well, a monthly trip could bring steady income. Hope flickered to life. You really think so? I know so. His hand found hers, warm and calloused. You're stronger than you know. Rachel Lawson. The week passed too quickly. Each day Tucker found more things to repair, and each evening they sat longer on the porch after the children were asleep, talking in low voices about everything and nothing. Rachel found herself telling him things she'd never spoken aloud, her fears for her children's future, her loneliness, her determination to preserve the home James had built for them. Tucker spoke of his own wanderings, the beauty of the territories he'd crossed, and sometimes, in quiet moments, of the war memories that still haunted his dreams. On his last evening, as they watched the sunset paint the Wyoming sky in brilliant hues, Tucker seemed unusually thoughtful. I'll be leaving at dawn, he said finally, the herd's moving out for Denver. Rachel nodded, fighting the heaviness in her heart. The children will miss you terribly. Only the children? His voice was soft. Rachel met his eyes. No, not only the children. Tucker took her hand gently. I've been thinking about what you asked about stopping somewhere, making a home. Rachel's heart began to race. And I've found my reason. His fingers tightened on hers. But I need to fulfill my contract. It's another month to Denver and back. A month, Rachel echoed, hardly daring to hope. If I return, would you consider... He hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. Would you consider allowing me to court you properly? Not as a drifter passing through, but as a man looking to put down roots? Tears sprang to Rachel's eyes. You'd want that? A widow with 3 children and a mountain of debt? Tucker's free hand rose to gently brush a tear from her cheek. What I want is you, Rachel Lawson. You and those amazing children. The rest is just details. Then yes, she whispered, if you return, I would welcome your courtship. In the soft glow of twilight, Tucker leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her lips, a promise more binding than any contract. Morning came too soon. The children clung to Tucker as he prepared to leave, extracting promises that he would return with stories of Denver. You will come back, won't you, Mr. Tucker? Hannah asked, her small face serious. Tucker crouched to her level. Wild horses couldn't keep me away, Miss Hannah. As he mounted his horse, he looked at Rachel one last time. 1 month, he said. Watch for me when the first snow falls. The days after Tucker's departure felt emptier than before he'd arrived. But Rachel found new determination in his absence. She took the repaired wagon to Cheyenne with her eggs and the extra vegetables from her garden, returning with twice the money she could have earned in Montezuma. The second trip brought even more. True to Tucker's prediction, Montgomery made no further attempts to collect the debt, though his glares when they passed in town spoke volumes about his resentment. As October gave way to November, Rachel began to watch the horizon, counting days. The children spoke of Tucker constantly, speculating about his adventures and planning what they would show him upon his return. The first snowflakes began to fall on a Tuesday morning, exactly 4 weeks after Tucker's departure. Rachel stood on her porch, watching the delicate white flakes drift from a pewter sky, her heart in her throat. By afternoon, the snow was falling steadily. Rachel kept herself busy, baking bread and mending clothes, trying not to watch the road too obviously. The children were more direct, rushing to the window at every sound. As dusk approached, Elijah's shoulders began to droop. Maybe the snow stopped him, he suggested, trying to sound grown up. Travel's harder in snow. Perhaps, Rachel agreed, tamping down her own disappointment. He'll come when he can. She had just lit the lamps when Hannah, who had appointed herself lookout at the window, let out a cry. Rider coming! It's him, Mama! It's Mr. Tucker! Rachel's heart leapt as she hurried to the door. Through the falling snow, a lone figure on horseback approached, snow dusting his shoulders and hat. Even at a distance, she would know him anywhere. The children burst from the cabin, heedless of the cold, racing toward the rider. Rachel followed more slowly, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Tucker dismounted in one fluid motion, dropping to one knee to receive the children's enthusiastic embraces. When he looked up and saw Rachel, his smile outshone the lamplight spilling from the cabin. "You're back," she said simply when she reached him. "I promised." He rose, still holding Sarah, who had flung her tiny arms around his neck. "And I've never meant to keep a promise more." That evening, after a joyous reunion dinner, and once the excited children were finally asleep, Tucker and Rachel sat before the fireplace, his arm around her shoulders. "Did you find what you needed in Denver?" she asked. Tucker nodded, reaching into his pocket. "I did." He produced a small leather pouch and placed it in her hand. Puzzled, Rachel opened it. Inside was a simple gold band with a small pearl. Her breath caught. "Tucker?" "It was my mother's," he said softly. "My father gave it to her when they had nothing but love between them." Rachel looked up at him, her heart pounding. "I know it's soon," Tucker continued. "I know courtship should come first. But when I reached Denver, all I could think about was getting back to you and the children. Every mile was one too many between us." He took her hands in his. "I've wandered for 5 years since the war ended, Rachel, never finding home until I found you. I don't want to wander anymore." "What are you saying?" she whispered, though she knew hoped what was coming. "I'm saying I love you. I love your courage, your heart, your stubborn pride. I love how fiercely you protect your children, how you never surrendered to despair, even when the world turned against you." Tucker's blue eyes held hers steadily. "I'm saying I want to build a life with you, with all of you." "We have nothing," Rachel said, even as joy bloomed within her. "Just a broken-down farm and too many debts." "Then we'll be rich in love," Tucker echoed his words from their first meeting, a smile playing at his lips. "Besides, that's not entirely true anymore." He reached into his coat and withdrew an envelope. "The cattle drive paid well, and it turns out Denver merchants are even more desperate for fresh eggs and produce than Cheyenne." Rachel opened the envelope to find more money than she'd seen in years. "Tucker, this is enough to pay off Montgomery with some left over," he finished. "And I've been offered a permanent position with the Palmer Ranch 20 miles west. Good wages, a foreman's cabin, and the owner is willing to let me run some cattle of my own on his land." Rachel stared at him in wonder. "You've thought of everything." "Not everything," he admitted. "I still don't know if you'll have me." In answer, Rachel leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. When they finally broke apart, she whispered, "Yes, Tucker Jameson. Yes to all of it." They were married 2 weeks later in the Montezuma church, with Elijah proudly giving the bride away. Even Mrs. Daniels, who had once whispered the cruelest comments, dabbed at her eyes during the ceremony. Montgomery was notably absent, having suddenly decided to visit relatives in St. Louis shortly after Rachel paid her debt in full with witnesses present. Spring found the expanded Jameson family settled in a comfortable cabin on the Palmer Ranch. Rachel's garden flourished, and Tucker's small herd grew steadily. Elijah shadowed Tucker constantly, learning ranching skills with eagerness, while Hannah discovered a talent for training the gentle mare Tucker had given her. Baby Sarah, no longer thin-cheeked and solemn, took her first confident steps across the cabin floor and into Tucker's waiting arms, her laughter the sweetest sound in their home. On warm evenings, the family would sit on their porch, watching the sun sink behind the mountains. Sometimes they spoke of the future of the children growing, of the ranch they might someday own outright, of dreams taking shape on the Wyoming horizon. "Did you ever imagine this?" Rachel asked one such evening, her head resting on Tucker's shoulder as the children played in the yard. "When you defended a poor widow in front of Wilkins' store, did you see this future?" Tucker's arm tightened around her. "Not specifically," he admitted. "But I knew from that first moment that you were extraordinary, Rachel Jameson. I knew I'd found something worth stopping for." "We had so little then," she mused. Tucker smiled, watching as Elijah showed Hannah how to twirl a small lasso while Sarah toddled after them, determined to keep up. "And now, look how rich we are." Rachel followed his gaze to their children, healthy, happy, secure, then looked back at the man whose love had transformed their lives. who had seen value in them when the world saw only burden, who had stopped wandering to build a home with them. Rich in love, she agreed softly, the very best kind of wealth. As the Wyoming twilight deepened around them, painting the land in purple and gold, Rachel knew with absolute certainty that they had found something most people search a lifetime for: a love as vast as the western sky, as enduring as the mountains, and as genuine as the promise of a new day dawning over the frontier they now called home.